If you're doing formal practice and you want to get more momentum in the time that you've got, so if you're living a busy life, you might actually be able to get 10 minutes in the morning or something like that in between everything else you do. You want to make the most of that time. So the way to make that most of that time is have a set time, and then when you've decided, okay, I'm going to go meditate, the moment you decide, okay, that's where I'm heading, drop everything. Start being mindful. Feel your feet on the ground. Feel the balance of your body. Start going within straight away. Move mindfully to the place that you're going to. Open the door mindfully. Sit down mindfully or lay down mindfully. Close your eyes mindfully. Move your hands mindfully. Adjust your posture mindfully, and then go into the meditation with that. If you do that, if you start practicing mindfulness in everyday life before that, then when you go into that formal practice, you actually carry that thread, that momentum. Some mindfulness and some concentration has already started to grow. So then when you sit down, you're not spending the first 5-10 minutes struggling with your attention, going, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to do that. Yeah, jumping all over the place before that even starts to settle down. You'll find you'll go straight in, you'll go in deeper each time if you can carry that thread. Also, when you finish the practice, why waste it? You've put all this effort of building up this momentum, all this effort exercising your brain, increasing the mindfulness, and then if I just finish the practice and go, oh, okay, what have I got to do? Run around. It's gone. Where did it go? Why not carry that out into your life and see how long you can hold it for? So you're here, you're meditating, and notice I said, okay, now go back, I'm just sitting. Remember I'm sitting. Notice it's become more general mindfulness. This is training for everyday life. Hearing. Okay, I'm hearing sounds. Open your eyes, be aware of seeing. Remember how I said that? If you do it mindfully, you can actually be aware of what's seeing. Seeing has a feel to it, believe it or not. It has a feeling. You can be aware that you're seeing, aware that you're looking. And then carry that. Move mindfully, get up mindfully, and walk off. It doesn't mean you have to move around slowly. It means that you just need to put effort into remembering what it is that you're doing. Yeah? So you're putting effort into that remembering. That's what mindfulness is, yeah? What am I doing now? Yeah? If you do that, you'll be able to carry that thread of mindfulness into everyday life. Hello, could you just pull that door shut? Because otherwise it will slam by itself. Yeah. Thank you. Might as well get it out of the way now. Used to that one. Want to just take a seat? Yeah. So it's important to look at your transition into your meditation and out. It's not just that period that you decided to meditate to. If you do that, the momentum will start to carry. Now, this transition also goes into everyday life. Use prompts to make you remember to put that effort into the mindfulness. Remember, with mindfulness, this is training. This is memory training. It's training and remembering what's happening right now. It's training and remembering how you're relating to what's happening right now. So to help yourself start doing that in everyday life, because this is important. If you only do it when you're sitting down to meditate, you're not going to get anywhere. You need to put that effort into everything, in the craziness. So you can use triggers. How many people like me like looking at themselves in a mirror or shop reflection when they walk past? Some people avoid it, do they? If you find that you check, if you like walking past mirrors, just checking that you're still there, yeah? You could use that as your trigger every time you see your reflection. Use that as a trigger to remember to be mindful. Yeah? Trigger, reflection, okay. Feet touching the ground, standing, balanced, here I am, right here, right now, come back. You could use, a good one is washing your hands or touching water. Washing your hands, having a shower, going for a swim down the beach. Use water as your trigger. So many times a day you might come in contact with water. So use that. Yeah? Or the water could also be having a cup of coffee. But just pick one thing to kind of be a trigger that will actually create that memory, to put that effort just coming back in your body, being just here, right now. If you do that, if you keep coming back like that, what you'll find is that thread will start to increase. So when you do it small periods throughout the day, but then eventually when you've got a dot here, you've got a dot here and a dot here, it becomes easier to fill those gaps. Can you see how it works? So just start off with something that's doable. Another good one is food. Whenever you're sitting down to eat, decide when I'm sitting down to eat, not going to watch TV, not going to read the newspaper, not going to have a conversation, I'm just going to sit there, I'm going to eat, I'm going to smell the food, taste the food, feel what it's like to chew, swallow the food, appreciate the food. And just be really present. Just these little triggers. If you do those throughout the day, then when it comes to doing your meditation practice, you'll find you'll get more momentum. But what it will also do is when you do this, it will protect you. Mindfulness protects you. It protects us. The way it protects us is when we're mindful, our awareness of how we are relating to things is higher. Our awareness of how we're relating to things is higher. Because mindfulness increases awareness. When mindfulness isn't present, our awareness will drop, especially if that's its default mode is low. When awareness is low, that is the soil in which irritation comes out of. That's the soil where anxiety, fear, depression, loneliness, everything like that comes out of this low awareness. When we're in low awareness, we go into default mode. We go into reaction mode. We don't really know what's going on. We tend to get caught in the story in our head about what we think's really going on. Yeah? With mindfulness being present, being very, very present, the awareness increases and we start to notice that when these reactions come, it's actually nothing outside of ourselves that's actually responsible for it. Nothing outside of ourselves is good or bad. Nothing outside of ourselves is pleasant or unpleasant. All these are judgments. Everything is actually neutral. Everything is neutral. This is the reality of it. Whether something is good or bad, whether we like it or we don't like it, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, is not in the thing, it's in our judgment of it. It's not in the situation, it's in our judgment of the situation. It's our relationship to it. This is where mindfulness of our relationship is really important, because it's our relationship to something that makes it good or bad. It's our relationship to it that makes it pleasant or unpleasant. It's our relationship to it that makes it painful or pleasurable. And so if you cultivate the mindfulness, you put the effort into carrying that thread, being mindful, but present in your body, you'll start to notice these relationships. And how these relationships appear is as a mental stance. Now, if I stand up, I can stand up with my body, I can stand up, relax 2 feet side by side, or I can dig my heels in and be in a really strong stance. Hold, fight everything off. And what we do is, if something is unpleasant, what we do is we tend to make a really strong mental stance. We take this mental stance and we go, block. Not going to allow this to happen. Struggle, this can't happen. And we start fighting against it, don't we? Mentally start to tighten, mentally go, you'll feel yourself just go, can't go any further. It's a stance of the mind. The mind is actually taking a stance. It's actually taking a posture. Yeah? And when we do this, when we posture against what is really happening, when we posture against reality, it causes pain. That's what causes pain. When we resist, when we fight against what is really happening, pain happens, pain comes about. That's how it happens. So what you'll do is, with that mindfulness being present, you'll start to notice when you start to take these mental postures. If you catch that early enough, you catch these postures early enough, what you can do is you can soften into that resistance. Start using your breathing to relax into that resistance. Relax into that mental posture. If you do that, the reaction will dissolve. If you do that, then the whole cycle won't play out. It's the relationship to things, it's that resistance, it's that mental stance to things that actually causes that pain. So the Buddha called that dukkha. Called it dukkha. Dukkha can be understood as, say, a wheel. In the centre of the wheel you've got the hub. But imagine if the hub of the wheel isn't round. It's kind of like off, it's oval. And then you've got a round axle and you put it in the wheel. So then when the wheel spins, it grinds. It's going, the wheel doesn't spin freely. So the wheel spinning is like life. And the hub around the axle that isn't quite round is like us resisting what's happening in our life. So then you'll get a feeling in your life like life is going along, but it's got this feeling of just grind, this feeling of friction. You got this feeling of friction. Sometimes the friction can be really in your face, just like, whoa, this is overwhelming. Other times the friction can be very, very subtle. Even when we're in our happiest times, you'll notice there's a slight feeling of not quite perfect. It's not quite perfect. And quite often this can become from the fear that we know that when things are good, when we're really happy, that it's going to eventually end. And so then we start mentally struggling in that as well, because we know it's going to end eventually. So we start fighting against that, and that just causes more pain. But there is the opposite to that, and that's called sukha. Sukha is like a wheel where the hub and the axle are perfectly ground. So the wheel is well greased and spins smoothly. No friction. Absolutely no feeling of friction. When we soften into, when we accept what is, when we stop struggling against reality, right? What happens is that friction disappears, the dukkha disappears. And I know this can be a hard thing to understand, but it's a matter of understanding that what is it happening in our life, whatever the life situation is not going to change by us fighting against it. It's not going to change by us denying it. It's not going to change by us tightening up inside. All that does is cause pain. It changes when we accept it. This is what's happening now. Because the pain does not happen or does not come from what's happening in our life. It comes from our resistance to it. It's a resistance to it. So what you're doing with these practices, with mindfulness practice, mindfulness, when it increases, when you put effort, the mindfulness increases, the awareness actually increases with it. And we saw that in that earlier meditation practice, how your mind started to clear. The awareness was starting to increase, the clarity clears. As that clears, notice how everything settles down. Did you notice that? Become more still, more clear, more comfortable. Someone in a class yesterday said they actually felt comfortable just sitting down. where before they would get uncomfortable, but then they got comfortable. Everything becomes comfortable. Why? Because that's softening into, that accepting rather than fighting against, right? What that does is it takes away that resistance. Pain is resistance to what is. There's things in our life we can't change. We've got two choices. We can fight against it, or we can accept it. Acceptance brings peace. Resistance brings pain. Reflect on your life. Whenever you've resisted anything, what's happened? Can you remember? Yeah? And that can be quite hard to put it down and say, okay, this isn't under my control. But most things in our life aren't under our control. And as you do this practice, you'll start to find that even your thinking isn't under your control. And the amazing thing about that with thinking is then when you put down the resistance of trying to fight the thinking, trying to stop the thinking, somebody who's been meditating for a while, what happens when you stop fighting the thinking, stop paying attention to it?
Thinking tends to stop.
It stops. There's the irony. Isn't that teaching you something? It just stops by itself, doesn't it? So it's our resistance that actually keeps these things going. So this is why this thread of mindfulness is really important, not just in your formal practice, but also to carry into everyday life. That's where people come to me and say all the time, they say, Steve, before certain things used to push my buttons, but now suddenly I'm finding that the button's being pushed, but the reaction isn't there, or the reaction is really, really small compared to what it used to be. And other people have come and said, I don't even have a reaction to that anymore. This is how it works. This is what we're doing. That's how mindfulness protects you. So hang on to that mindfulness like you would a life raft, because the more you cultivate that, the more it will protect you and the more everything will settle down. It's only all this stuff is only out of balance. We're only reacting because our mindfulness is low. We haven't exercised that part of our brain. We haven't exercised the ability to know this is what's happening right now. This is what I'm experiencing right now. This is real. This is what's real. We haven't exercised.